All right, Sam Monson here with Trevor Sikkema in the Airbnb at Indianapolis for the Scouting Combine. Day one here, and it's going to be a lot of quarterback talk today, Trevor. A lot of coach speak at the podiums, but a lot
Quite
of it
literally,
did.
quite literally, coach speak.
Yes, a lot of it did focus on the quarterback. So I want to run through some of the biggest stories that we heard at least surface today.
Let's do it.
Even if they were in coach speak. Let's start with the Minnesota Vikings,
Okay.
who sound like they are quite in on bringing Kirk Cousins back, and now they have a new quarterback coach to do it with Josh McCown.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that they would kind of say that at the podium, right? I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that Kirk Cousins would not return to Minnesota.
Right.
We figure with Baker Mayfield probably returning to Tampa, the market for quarterbacks not really robust outside of Kirk Cousins really being the only viable option left. So we figure that he'll have suitors, but he likes it in Minnesota. We know that Minnesota isn't going to be one of those teams that goes, okay, yeah, we'll let Kirk walk. Like, even if they wanted to be really in on the quarterback market this upcoming year, it's hard to be in a situation where they're just letting Kirk walk, not actually trying to get a deal done with him, and then going into the draft, especially picking outside of the top 10 and pigeonholing themselves to drafting a quarterback in the first round that they will probably have to start. So them coming out and saying, yeah, we would like to have Kirk Cousins back, it's not totally out of the blue, but I don't know. I do not think that it totally means, oh, they're much more in on the veteran market than they are the rookie quarterback market. I just think that it was something that maybe they had to say. What did you think about that?
So Kirk Cousins in particular, I think Kevin O'Connell loves Kirk Cousins. Like, I think he's decided after, the exposure he's had to him that Kirk's actually a fantastic quarterback for this offense. He operates it really well.
He played really well last year.
Yeah, he sees a lot of traits in Cousins that he likes, and I think there's a lot of respect there. But from a front office point of view, I think they have a more, not even a dim view of it, but more, we don't like the sort of revolving, 3-year fully guaranteed contract that we've been re-upping and re-upping and re-upping.
Right. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, we want to put a stop date to that. But now they're in this tough world where, like, we want him back, but the thing that's going to get him back is the thing that we don't want to do, that 3-year fully guaranteed deal.
Because you're right, Cousins' situation's a little bit different where most other quarterbacks in the NFL, like, I don't know what Baker Mayfield's deal is going to be, but it feels as though a Mayfield deal would be more towards what you see normally for, say, 3-year deals for quarterbacks, where it's most of the money's up front, and then you can get pretty flexible year 2, but year 3 specifically. For Cousins, if you want to bring him back, he's probably not going to sign for anything that's less than a 3-year deal, and his precedent at this point is fully guaranteed. So that might make things a little bit tricky because Kirk still thinks he's a good quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So is Kirk going to want to sit there and say, so for the Vikings, let's just kind of paint the picture like this. Is the best case scenario for the Vikings to re-sign Kirk Cousins for like a 2-year deal and then draft a J.J. McCarthy or a Bo Nix or something like that? Because I feel like that's actually their best case scenario. But do you want to do that with Kirk Cousins on a 3-year fully guaranteed deal? Because then you are truly eating into that rookie contract window a lot more than you want to, especially if it's a guy like McCarthy that you might draft in the top 15 because you think he's going to be that next great guy. And I think that'd be a great situation for him. I would love that. I think that what they said at the Combine means that that is realistic. I just don't know if Kirk, knowing that he has the market elsewhere in the NFL, is going to be willing to kind of give the Vikings what they want, have their cake and eat it too.
That's the thing. It feels like if they were willing to go there, that 3-year fully guaranteed deal, the next version of the deals that he's been signing already in Minnesota, it would have happened already. Like, they wouldn't have let it get this far if they were willing to do that. And so they're all, it feels like they're basically calling his bluff that will be out there on the open market.
Yeah.
And I at least feel intuitively that there will be an offer from that. Like, somebody's
going
to
give him that kind of money.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
I don't know if that's a calculated gamble by Minnesota that, hey, he's 35. He's coming off. Is he 35? He's coming off an Achilles
34,
injury.
35, something like that.
That's a lot of risk for a 3-year fully guaranteed contract, which is still an outlier in the NFL. Like, not that many teams are doing that kind of quarterback contract. So I think they've basically taken the risk that, hey, we don't like this anymore. We're stopping it. And we don't think anyone else is going to give him the deal either. But there's enough quarterback desperate teams out there, Atlanta, Denver, Las Vegas,
right?
That somebody's going to give him that contract,
Yep.
and I don't think the Vikings can get him back without it.
Yeah, I mean, New England, you could throw them in there
Right.
if they wanted to sign a guy like Kirk Cousins that would give them the freedom to draft a Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top of the draft, right? So I agree. It makes sense that the Vikings said this at the podium. I just don't know how realistic it is for them. By the way, Kirk Cousins is 35 years old, turns 36 in August. So this
Right.
next year,
Coming
he
off
will
the
be
Achilles.
36 years old, right, coming off the Achilles. So, to sign him to another 3-year deal, that's basically bringing him to 39, almost 40 years old. So
Yeah.
I don't think the Vikings are going to want to do that either.
Yeah, which is not, and we're in a weird world though where that's not unprecedented anymore, right? Tom Brady obviously pushed it to stupid numbers at
Yes.
45, 46 years old.
Right.
But Aaron Rodgers, everyone expects Aaron Rodgers to be back next year effectively as good as new, even though he's older than Kirk Cousins, right?
Right.
We've reached this point where 38, 39-year-old is no longer like, there's no way that guy functions at that point, particularly a quarterback like Cousins, who does go out of his way to take care of himself.
Yeah, and it's not like he's
do all that
winning
kind of stuff.
predominantly off of
Right.
arm talent and athletic ability. He still has it.
So
I'm
it's
not trying to
obviously
take that away
it's
from
obviously
him,
still risky, but it's not like if you were trying to make that case in like the early 2000s, you would be laughed out of the room. Like,
Right.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, maybe.
Right.
Or he could be one of those guys that just hits the wall and you're done. So it's risky. Let's move on to Raheem Morris, who made the fairly self-evident point that if the Atlanta Falcons quarterbacks hadn't been terrible last year, he wouldn't be standing here right now.
He wouldn't be there, right?
But he also made some further interesting comments. These ones actually away from the podium, where he was kind of talking about the type of quarterback that they're going to want to pursue in Atlanta. And one of the things he brought up was a guy that kind of fits the city, right? Fits Atlanta, fits the whole environment and the culture and everything they're doing there. And that obviously led to some people drawing some parallels or links with Justin Fields, who
Sure.
has connections, right? So
Right.
what is the quarterback that we think Atlanta is going to be going for, given where they're situated, given what they have available or options on the table?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think every coach in every organization would want a quarterback who has the same heartbeat as the city, right? Can be embraced by the city. Like that's something that's not necessarily unique to Atlanta. I think every franchise wants that, because a franchise quarterback is somebody that the whole city, the whole organization, the whole fan base can rally around. So that's an important part of that identity. We've long talked about Justin Fields landing in Atlanta as a preferred spot for him, because we think that it makes a lot of sense. I think that getting to work with Zach Robinson would be great as their offensive coordinator there. It would truly surround Justin Fields with a lot better weapons than he has had in certainly the recent years that he has been the starting quarterback there. And we even saw that Justin Fields was able to take that next step with a less than ideal supporting cast that we saw in Chicago. So Atlanta's a spot where, even if you're a Justin Fields skeptic, like, you got to be excited about what he could potentially bring to the table. And I don't know exactly what that compensation is going to look like. And I know that kind of takes us into another point. We don't have to jump into it right now, but the Bears have been taking a lot of calls for number one overall, seeing what that price tag would be like. And in doing so, you would think Justin Fields is probably off the table. But, if Chicago's, say, only trading down to 2 or 3 and still thinking about getting a quarterback, Fields has got to have a spot that he is going to get traded to anyway. So I don't mind this idea of Justin Fields potentially being the answer, albeit maybe even short term, in Atlanta. I still think that's a viable option for them, especially with them sitting at number 8 in the draft and figuring that all 3 of the top quarterbacks are going to be gone by that point. So I think it's a scenario that we have talked about a lot, and it's one that Atlanta, I'm sure, is exploring pretty heavily.
Yeah, and it does make some sense. Like, if they find a way of making the Justin Fields trade happen, obviously that frees up number 8 to add another potential playmaker, maybe a receiver. Maybe they jump immediately into the Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze.
Which would be sick.
Right, type of market,
That would
right?
be
And
sick.
all of a sudden now you're talking about, look, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and
Roma Dunze, whoever it is, yeah.
Now
right.
you've got some
Yeah.
behind a really good offensive
now
line.
you're not allowed to pick that team in Madden anymore. Like, now you're not,
Right.
like, if you get in the lobby and somebody picks the Falcons, you just leave.
Yeah, forget it. Behind a really good offensive line as well. Like,
Yes.
that suddenly becomes a situation that's amazing for Justin Fields to function in. And I think the biggest, concern or red flag or however negative drawback to Justin Fields right now as a starting quarterback is not, can he be good or not? It's, how quickly you're going to have to pay him big money if he is good, right?
Yeah.
Which for Atlanta is a smaller problem than it is for Chicago, who are potentially further away and have the number 1 overall pick and all these kinds of things. But it could be a home run for Atlanta, and if it doesn't work out, you still added, Rome Odunze or somebody like that. You still have this incredible nucleus, and you still just need to find the quarterback. But
yes.
It does make a lot of sense for them.
And for Atlanta, they'll have a decent amount of draft capital to be flexible there at quarterback, whether it is trading for Justin Fields or not, because depending on what happens with Calvin Ridley, whether he resigns with the Jags or not, the Falcons are going to get an extra either 3rd-round pick or 2nd-round pick from Jacksonville. If he resigns, I believe that the stipulations are if he resigns with Jacksonville, they get a 2nd-round pick.
It's before the league year starts.
Okay.
So if they re-sign him before the league year starts, it becomes a 2nd-round pick. Otherwise, it's a 3rd.
So they'll have extra flexibility no matter what, whether it's a 2nd or a 3rd. And I think that will be extra ammo no matter what, to where if you want to go get a Justin Fields, you can. It also allows you to be in a situation where, let's say you still want to go with a playmaker in the top 10. You don't want to reach for a quarterback if you believe that like a Michael Penix, a Bo Nix, a J.J. McCarthy, those guys are reaches at number 8. You could potentially trade back in the 1st round because they got picked 43 in the 2nd round. You could pair that and one of those 3rd-round picks, or maybe even something later to jump back up into the 1st round, depending on how far you're jumping back up, to go get one of those quarterbacks. And I've done that in some mock draft simulations, and I actually kind of like the haul that they end up getting, when it is something like a Rome Odunze and then a Michael Penix, or a Rome Odunze and a Bo Nix. Like, I like that a lot for them. So that is something that I think about as well.
They'd also be, a really intriguing team to, let's say they trade for Justin Fields. It costs them the 2nd-round pick, 43 right now, right? If whether or not Calvin Ridley signs, they're going to have either a 3rd or a 2nd-round pick out of that. You could potentially use number 8 on Rome Odunze, bring in Justin Fields with your 2nd-round pick, with either the 2nd or the next, the 3rd-round pick, whatever that Ridley pick becomes, use that on a quarterback. Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix if they last in the 2nd round, a Spencer Rattler, in the 3rd or the 4th round, something like that. So you at least have some other contingency built in there. Maybe somebody will give you something for Desmond Ridder to just get rid of him, or even Taylor.
Right.
You could overhaul that quarterback room, and now you've got Justin Fields sitting there. You think he's the guy. You've got a little bit of a contingency sitting there and a rookie behind him just in case.
Yep.
And you have an amazing environment around him to cook with, and obviously PFF Zach Robinson,
of course,
to make it all happen.
Right. No, I think that's a good situation for Atlanta. I think they're in a good spot.
Let's take it from the Justin Fields Chicago point of view, because Ryan Poles was talking as well, and he said, first and foremost, the phone's been ringing off the hook, right, as you would imagine. Trade offers all over the place. But one of the things he said I thought that was pretty interesting is if they're going to draft a quarterback at the top of this draft, they want to move Justin Fields before free agency to basically do right by him.
Sure.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it makes sense from where they're currently standing, right? Especially for as divided as the fan base has been on this. There's still a lot of Bears fans that are saying, no, the best course of action is to stick with Justin Fields.
Right.
Look at the progress that he's made and build a more talented team around him. Trade that number 1 pick, drop down a good amount, maybe back into the top 10, shoot, maybe even past the top 10, like a team like the Denver Broncos or the Minnesota Vikings or whoever it is that might want to get up to that number 1 spot. And you're getting a massive haul for those players. You're continuing to own and control the draft with multiple 1st-round picks for years to come. You're surrounding Justin Fields with a lot of great weapons. It's great in theory, but it's only great in theory if Justin Fields pans out. So if you believe that he is that kind of a player, that sort of a reality is very alluring. And I think that there are a lot of fans who are gravitating towards that. And so it makes sense that they would, one, come out and say that publicly because you don't want to piss off all of those fans. And I also think that you do want to do right by Justin Fields. Like, at the end of the day, we all get it. It's a business, and these teams got to make business decisions. But I think the Bears also realize we didn't necessarily do our part for you, for Justin Fields. And I think that there is something to, if they can get a deal done before free agency, wanting to do so. Now, the cards might not fall in a way where that ends up making sense. Like I said, it's a business at the end of the day. But I do actually believe that they are trying to make this happen. If they ultimately think this is the best course of action to move on from him, having these conversations here at the Combine with as many teams as they can, getting these trade scenarios fleshed out and these conversations had, I think that they would like to deal him before free agency starts. So I don't actually think that that's just totally fabricated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a difference between wanting it to happen, saying it out loud, and actually making it happen and doing it, right?
Sure.
Because, I mean, ultimately, there's no reason they wouldn't want to do right by him, right? Like, you wouldn't, like, all things being equal, there's no reason you would harbor resentment against Justin Fields.
Right,
like,
right.
That guy screwed this franchise, and we're going to ruin him on the way out the door. Like,
No,
it's
I
just
don't.
like,
That's
look,
not the case.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
Right.
And he's a great kid. He's a great quarterback. We like him. We're going to go in a different direction, but we would like to help him on the way out the door.
Right.
But as you said, it is a business, and ultimately, I find it strange, though not unprecedented, if they actually did allow that to change what they would do otherwise, right? Like, we all hear all the
You're
time
saying,
about
like,
how
if they can't trade him before the deadline, they go, I guess we're keeping
well,
him.
like, would you take a worse deal now to do right by Justin Fields versus waiting a
right.
couple of weeks when
Probably not.
Exactly, right?
Probably not.
So that's the thing that would be slightly strange, though. Again, not like completely unprecedented. There's some strange times where teams do, like, we all know it's a business, it's ruthless, it's cutthroat, and then every now and again a team just decides they're going to be, nice guys and like
Sure.
actively not get the best deal they could possibly get for that. That's where it would be a little bit weird if they were like, we love Justin Fields. He's a good kid. We want to do right by him, so we're going to take a worse deal to let him go.
No,
early.
teams don't often do the worst deal thing, right?
So that part would be a little strange.
It's kind of the phrase that teams will lie with what they say. They won't lie with their money.
Yes.
And that's like, draft picks, you could throw that in there as well, where, yeah, sure, they'd like to do right by Justin Fields, but I agree with you. Again, like I said, the caveat there is that it is a business at the end of the day. They've got to do what's best for the Chicago Bears.
And if you want to look into the 3D chess type of modeling of this, it's also like basically putting out a sign saying, hey, hurry up, guys. Like, we want to move him now.
Sure.
So if you have a deal on the table that you're mulling
right,
over,
right,
now's the time to
right.
phone it
Hit
in.
the offer.
Right, exactly, because
Yes,
we're getting ready to take one. So let's
Yep.
get moving, people. The last guy I think I want to talk about for what he said during today, Sean Payton. Sean Payton, I think, is actually one of the more interesting coaches when it comes to these podiums and press conferences and that kind of thing, because he's kind of a belligerent asshole in them. And I don't mean that as a negative. I mean it as a compliment. I like everyone else, that kind of plays the game, deals with the media. Sean Payton's just like ragging on people, saying, I've already answered that 3 times, like taking control of the press conference, saying, no, you used up your question. I'm going to someone else now. And then extending it, like after the poor dude at the side of the podium whose job it is to like marshal time and be like, wrap it up, guys, we're done. He's like, nah, you sit back quiet. I'm taking 3 more questions. It's fun.
Peyton does the combine by his own rules. There's no question about it. Even going back to his time with the Saints, like he's a wild. He does not really hide his words. He doesn't hide how he feels because he is fully confident in his logic and how he got to his conclusions. And I think that you see that when he gets up on the podium.
And I think he also is acutely aware that like who's gonna call him on any of it. Like do whatever the hell he wants.
He is very clearly in control, and I think you learned that very early on during his tenure in Denver that like he's in control in Denver.
So, everyone obviously was trying to push on the Russell Wilson thing. He basically said, look, you'll know in 2 weeks, and then repeatedly said that. But what do you think they end up doing from this position of actually quite far away from being able to get, one of the top quarterbacks, given where they are?
And they're in an interesting spot, too, because they're sitting at 12.
Yeah.
A lot of quarterback-needy teams in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
I ultimately don't think Chicago's going to trade out. And I especially don't think Chicago's going to trade out all the way to 12.
Right.
I don't think Washington's trading out at 2. Like, whether they end up picking Caleb Williams or not, like, we've heard, like, what about the scenarios of them maybe moving up a spot, like, trading with Chicago? Like, okay, maybe they're moving out of 2 to move up to 1, but I don't think they're going any further back than 2. So then you basically get to New England, and it becomes a question, does New England love Jaden Daniels or Drake May, whoever's going to be there? And if they don't, maybe that becomes a reality. But outside of that, man, like,
and the New England deal in particular is really unfortunate from a Denver perspective because we have really recent precedent for that exact number of picks.
And it's not
12
good.
to 3.
And it's not
and
good.
And it's 3 first-round
and
picks.
It's bad.
Right.
Right. It's as if you were trading up to number 1.
Yeah.
So
if you're New England
that is tough.
and Denver gets on the phone, like your starting point is
The Trey Lance trade.
The Trey Lance trade
Right.
adjusted for inflation.
Right.
Like, so Denver, if they're trying to make that move happen, like have to be aware already that that's what that looks like.
So I don't know. I think that they're exploring all options to be that aggressive. I ultimately don't think they'll get the opportunity to be that aggressive. Instead, I think they're going to look at maybe not staying at 12 because it doesn't feel like they're going to be a team that's going to stay put at number 12.
Right.
I feel if you gave me even odds right now, does Denver pick at 12 or do they pick in any other spot? I'd probably bet that they're going to pick in some other spot because I think that Peyton's going to want to move one way or the other. I think it's going to end up him moving up. I think he's going to want to try to – they're going to gauge, I believe, where the league is on J.J. McCarthy because I think McCarthy's going to go in the top 15. I wonder if he's going to be a Sean Payton type of a quarterback. And if he is, I think Payton's not really going to let anybody get in his way of drafting him, so he's not going to sit there at 12.
So are they just is he literally just zeroing in on McCarthy because we believe he's going to be QB4 and that's the one that they're going to have range of getting to?
I don't think he's like going to pigeonhole himself into McCarthy. Like I could see Denver liking Bo Nix as well. Like I could see Denver liking Michael Penix, although I'm not sure they have the receivers that they trust for a Michael Penix-led offense. But I think that howitzer of an arm, I mean, I feel like that could be alluring to Sean Payton and somebody who's not afraid to push the ball deep down the field. But, I've kind of been told from people who have, either talked to teams or know McCarthy well, that seems as though the league really likes what McCarthy is as a processor, how much he's improved from 2022 to 2023, how he sees the field, how he processes things when it comes to defenses, post-snap, like all this kinds of stuff. And that's the stuff that Sean Payton was able to work very well with Drew Brees. And I'm not going to sit here and call J.J. McCarthy a future Hall of Famer and one of the most accomplished quarterbacks to ever play the game.
Cool. On this show, we are allowed to compare without equating.
Yeah, so I'm saying that actually. But that kind of characteristic of this guy really hones in on seeing things pre-snap and post-snap, making the right decisions, like that's what Sean Payton was able to do with Drew Brees for so long. It's surround him with really good playmakers, and Brees was able to be an assassin between the years, if you will. If he thinks that McCarthy is capable of that, then he's going to go get his guy.
And if we think that the Broncos end up dialing in on J.J. McCarthy, going to get him, making it happen, do they start him right away, or is he a project that needs development in their eyes, and they'll go get, maybe even just leave it to Jarrett Stidham, but like a bridge quarterback?
I don't know if Jarrett Stidham does it for him, right? I mean, I think that you would probably have to sign somebody, and at that point, do you have the cap space to sign somebody with how you would be moving on from Russell Wilson? Right. Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't love the idea of McCarthy starting week 1 in the NFL. I think he's going to struggle if that's the case. But I wouldn't mind him in a scenario like what Sam Howell had, where he sits most of his rookie year, and then the final year or the final month of his rookie year, he's able to come in and play right away. Second year is kind of fully his, and so I'd love a scenario like that. But we know that the NFL is an impatient league. Yeah, you don't always get those scenarios. So sometimes quarterbacks just need to get thrown into the fire. And I'm a little bit worried about that with McCarthy, but it's just kind of the reality of where we are in the league.
All right, that's going to do it for our day one reaction from the Combine. We'll be back tomorrow and the rest of the week with all kinds of extra stuff. Check out PFF social media for all the instant reaction to stuff that's happening. We'll talk to you later.